So this is fully booked, season 12. We've read through The Way of the Superior Man. We've definitely had differences of opinions in some parts of the book, but this is the book review where it all goes down in the DMs. So without further ado,
I'll set it off still because mine's kind of lengthy. So I'm
Okay.
Then any questions, and we'll discuss after. Then you know the protocol.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the title, The Way of the Superior Man, and there's an other bit of it, The Guide to Spiritual. I can't remember the rest. What did it say?
Spiritual Guide to Mastering the Challenges of Women, Work, and Sexual Desire.
Mm-hmm. All right, so it sounds provocative with intention to get attention, with the subtitle providing its actual nature for what the book is about. The author's intentions are clear for being a guide to what he suggests is spiritual masculine mastery. The introduction gets straight to it. It's written with an expectation of a certain base of level of understanding described as people who have already achieved respect for the other genders and sexual preferences, and who consider men and women to be social, economic, and political equals. He also clears up the language pattern beforehand in regards to he and she, acknowledging the differential permutations in today's society, and simplifies the masculine and feminine essences. He essentially covers all the bases and gets straight to the point, dismantling taboo talk from the surface, possibly very un-PC. However, as you read and on, you begin to understand it from the perspective of peeling back the layers to being the essence that you hold within as an individual. As it says on the tin, it's a spiritual guide to mastering the challenges of women, work, and sexual desires. The book is written in such a way you can read it chronologically or topically, helpful for real-life scenarios or issues you may be experiencing at any moment. It can also provide a discussion point for you and your partner based on individual chapters or even whole parts. For example, part 4, what women really want, certain to open up dialogue either one of you may not have been aware of. Let me read that again. It's certain to open up dialogue either one of you may not be aware of. This book definitely fits in self-development genre amid the most common titles that gets chucked around. This one just happens to cover subject matter to be considered taboo amongst our society, especially in the UK, as most squirm at the mention of sex, sexuality, or gender roles. However, they play a large role in our lives and is another aspect of life we should seek to improve on. Deida is a teacher of spirituality and sexuality. Thus, the book written from a male perspective, but notwithstanding of archaic masculine macho rhetoric. As the guide of the book, he offers guidance to the masculine while still upholding the relevance and importance of the feminine. In most sentiments, the author presents, I follow his train of thought and point of view. From page 1, what and who this book is for resonated instantly with statements such as, this book is a guide for a specific kind of newly evolving man. This man is unabashedly masculine. He's purposeful, confident, and directed, living his chosen way of life with deep integrity and humor. And he is sensitive, spontaneous, and spiritually alive with a heart commitment to discovering and living his deepest truth. A summary of my day-to-day intention navigating life. Don't know why I put that, all right. He presents a philosophy which I had never considered prior, but understand and now endorse, that being the world and your woman will always present you with unforeseen challenges. And with that, we should move accordingly with knowing that the challenges will never stop and how you handle one is how you handle the other. Another guiding point he demonstrates is in reference when a woman suggests something that changes a man's perspective, then he should make a new decision based on his new perspective. But he should never portray his own deepest knowledge and intuition in order to please his woman or go along with her. Both she and he will be weakened by such an action. They will grow to resent each other, and the crust of accumulated inauthenticity will burden their love, as well as their capacity for free action. There are many other examples easily relatable. However, to add a contrary point, there are statements and perspectives I don't necessarily agree with. However, I understand the sentiment and underlying point he's trying to convey. Even so, I don't agree with part 16, women are not liars. The premise he presents is agreeable, However, to suggest they don't lie at all doesn't sit with me, nor is true. There's also questionable statements made, such as the difference between rape and ravishment is love, on page 131. However, if you read beyond the surface of what's said, you can increase your understanding of the general philosophy he is sharing. Even still, that statement is wild, as well as the scenarios presented, which had me questioning whether they were real life or incidents or a soap opera. The overall thesis is clearly defined and reiterated numerous times, which I've found to be empowering for both the masculine and feminine standpoints. The author's style is not for the faint-hearted or easily offended. He pulls no punches and wants you to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. He intentionally writes in a provocative way, but skillfully enough not to offend any particular individual per se. Yet if read literally in all that he speaks of, it's easy to see how much will go over your head. For example, he mentions driving with an 18-year-old babysitter to drop back home and speaks of the young sexual energy she possesses, but not to deny its existence. Rather acknowledge it without having to act on it or allow it to be anything more than an acknowledgement of the fact. When read, most would look at the age, the author's position, and conclude the worst due to perspective of our Western society's values and what we deem as acceptable and unacceptable. However, deeper understanding of this statement will lead to acknowledging the energies we all possess, young and old, and not to deny these, rather accepting they are there and it's okay to be aware. Each chapter and concepts are well defined, although some may come across as ambiguous at times, or it could be due to the fact real life scenarios could help bring some of the points to a practical setting. By the time you've got to the end of the book, you're going to either have an understanding of how he writes, which isn't quite straightforward as can be, but acknowledge he offers great guidance, or he's a nut job who's going to start a cult somewhere. So in summary, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It will be used as a guide, a point of reference, and would introduce it to a partner where applicable. A 4 out of 5 from me, and that is my book review.
Yes, I like that one. I like that book review still. What I'm gonna do, rather than question on anything you said, I'm gonna put out my book review now.
Okay. Cool. We'll just do the questions for everyone after, so.
Yeah. Bear with us, I'll just get ready.
Yeah, thing.
So here's Mace's book review on The Way of the Superior Man by Deida. This is my conclusion, my book review. Let's start it off. All right, so great. When I picked up the book, great introduction to the book. The first 10 pages tempted me to want to read on, broke down masculine and feminine essences very, very well, and how, in his opinion and research, the masculine and feminine traditional roles are changing and evolving. He then signified who the book is aimed at, and that it's not all encompassing, so there will be exceptions. This is something that many books don't do, and I really appreciated that from the off, because if you're 10, 15 pages into a book and you're not really sure where it's going to go, sometimes you can waste a bit of time. You can get halfway, 75% through the book and realize actually it just hasn't been sinking in. From the beginning, the outset, the first 10, 15, he says, look, this is who the book's for, this is what the book's about. You then, as a reader, can decide whether you're going to go on and read that or put it down to one side and say, not for me at this moment in time. I love the fact that in the introduction, he gave 2 or 3 permutations that already had me looking up at the ceiling and thinking, permutations which I've thought about previously, but hadn't worded in my head as succinctly as he had put it in the book. 3 words, absolutely nailed it. What I loved was he had some brilliant quotes and one-liners in there as well in the early stages of the books. Like, most postponements are excuses for a lack of creative discipline. Brilliant, brilliant one-liner. Limited money and family obligations have never stopped a man who really wanted to do something. Again, brilliant. What I loved about the book. I love the decisiveness of the book. From as early as page 15, he talks about the fact that things won't change. Don't hang about, do it. Leave your woman if she's intolerable. Don't bet or wait around on her changing. The directness of the messages conveyed are also a credit. This isn't someone trying to fill the pages with fancy sentences. There's no real pussyfooting around. It's straight to the point, and in essence, and some cases, will hit where it hurts. The painful truth, as some might say. Okay, so that's the kind of positives. What I didn't like about the book, what I didn't like was the divide, they and us, masculine and feminine. There's a sentence where he refers to a woman as the feminine, or there's a number of sentences, to be fair, where he refers to women as the feminine. I'll be honest, I find that rude and distasteful, personally. Almost as if they're a different creature, I didn't like it. It didn't sit well with me. There's a section in chapter 15 where he states, your woman will test you, and it lists up the various ways that this will happen, including changing her mind and doubting him. There are also many assumptions made in the book about women, their thoughts, them, and their motives, with no field data to back up the claims. Sentences like, she will test you and she might not be fully conscious of why she's doing it, but she will poke your weak spots. How has David Deida come to this realization? Did his sister tell him, his neighbor, mother, partner? Is it from his experience with one out of the billions of women in the world? I need more depth to loose statements like this for me to fully buy into David Dean's ideologies. One of the most flagrant quotes in the book, which French has already mentioned, was it contains when the book contains when David Deida refers to the difference between rape and ravishment being love. Listen, in my world, the difference between rape and ravishment is consent. Because let me tell you something, there's people in relationships that have love for someone, but if they say no at that point, it's a no. It's not, yo, we both love each other, so you're giving me this panini right now, you get me? So anyway, with all that being said, about a third of the way into the book, from chapter 2 onwards, there was a section which focuses on what men could do to help keep a masculine-feminine divide in a relationship and stop your woman developing her own masculine role. And you know what? This resonated with me, this chapter, like from this chapter onwards. And the reason is, it's a poignant time. It's lockdown at the moment. So you're spending, if you're in a relationship and you're living with your partner, you're spending a lot more time with your partner. What David Dean refers to in this kind of section and beyond is that when you're always with your partner too much, you start to rub off on each other. They pick up your little traits, your habits, your little your quirky like words or one-liners or the way you say stuff, and vice versa. So with that, there might be kind of overlapping of roles. And I think one thing about the book is he likes to separate a kind of masculine and feminine divide, because it all links back, not all, but some of it links back to even in the bedroom where you have that divide. And when he talks about the kind of ravishment and ravishing, there has to be a ravisher. So if you're spending too much time, if you're rubbing off each other, if you're starting to actually cross over in traits and the way you think and feel, actually, when you get in the bedroom, it could be more of a friendship thing. So anyway, some of the tips and statements were actually really good, the do's and don'ts, because some of the mentioned scenarios, as I said, have come up in my own relationship. Things such as providing an opinion with substance, when your lady asks, what shoe should I wear? Or what do you think looks better? Would help your relationship, because providing an opinion with reason shows you actually care rather than saying up to you, which I've sometimes done in the heat of the moment. The way Deida summed up how this can affect your relationship long-term is actually really good, because I can vouch for some of the rhetoric firsthand. So there are parts of the book that hit home on a personal note and made sense to me because I've experienced what he said. And what I would add to that as well is, whilst we're going through in some of the episodes we put out, whilst we're going through the book, what I was saying at the time was, the parts of the book that I really took in, and actually I could see past some of the language that I wasn't comfortable with, was where actually there's been scenarios or situations which are closer to home. So where I've experienced them or seen them firsthand. And I think with that, with this book, reading between the lines, there are very good, both clear and subtle messages that the book delivers. However, someone can easily get lost in the sometimes volatile and derogatory commentary that Deida has put down on the paper sometimes. So for me, those who are easily offended do not read. But for me, one thing, there's a couple of questions I asked about books, and you lot will know this from my previous book reviews. As I always say this as well, yeah? I want to pick up a book and I'm not having to search for words in a dictionary. What does this mean? I can read this through. I don't have to stop. And what I liked about it, the way it's broken, he's broken it down into small segments, small chapters and parts. And it's gonna sound completely crazy. It might sound completely bonkers, but even that, when I'm reading a book sometimes, when you get to an end of a chapter or end of a part, it's a sense of achievement or a marker. And even the fact that those chapters and parts are so small, it feels like I'm what do you call it? It feels like I am progressing with the book as I read, and it feels like it's not taking as long to read. And it sounds crazy. It might just be like in my own head, but that's why I like the book, because it felt like I was reading. And actually, I wasn't like, when is the next chapter? So I have like a kind of a separation point where I can close off for the evening. That's what I liked about this book. It was an easy read. When I say easy, I mean like it's a swift read. You can get through it, taking everything at not face value, but taking everything as it's being written on the page. And there's messages in there that I really feel it benefits people who've been in them situations, because some of the language is bad, or some of the way descriptions of how he sums up the masculine and feminine traits are bad. But if you've been in those situational scenarios, you can almost look past the way he's explained it and look at the detail, the devil's in the detail in some of this book. I would actually recommend this book. And what I would say, depends on the person I'm recommending it to, I'll say, look, give it a chance, look past some of the derogatory language and some of the terms of reference he uses to describe some of the sexes, men and women, or women mainly, and just read through it. Because actually, Fox, you done this as well, actually. You posted a great clip about a week or two into our group where someone had randomly actually read the book and a female had read the book and was recommending it to a guy. And she had said, you've got to get this book. So actually, it's about perception as well. She obviously saw it, read the book, and she's of that feminine essence he's described in that book. Whereas I know other women, I've described some of the stuff in the book to other women, and they've said they won't touch the book just because of the way he's referred to women. So for me, the book, if I'm going to give it a marking out of 5, I'd probably be inclined to give it a 3.5 out of 5. Would I recommend it? Yes, depending on who the person is, and it will come with a little, you know when you get a contract, the little font 6s at the bottom, just discretionary comment, like, you know what, you have to take certain language bits with a pinch of salt and try and see the substance in the book. That's my book review.
Both very thorough book reviews. Both very thorough. Mine's short. Not that I'm here to make any excuses for it. But yeah, I'll get straight to it. So out the gate, I'm going to give the book a 3 out of 5. I thought the book was informative, great information, which I'll refer to or go back to. Information that made me look back. And that's what happened in the beginning with hindsight. What I would say in my learning about writing and obviously about our thoughts is that some of our thoughts, some of our thoughts will stand the test of time based on when they were conceived. Yeah, based on when they're conceived, the period of time. And I don't think some of the things said in the book are entirely relevant today. I know obviously French, I know you mentioned 1 or 2 things in reference to spirituality, and I think the way he wrote the book and things of that nature. So I definitely understand things based on also your book review. And I think, Mason, you said very, very similar ones, or similar things, sorry, in your book review as well. As interesting as it was, apart from the very beginning of the book never really had me, or had me in parts. And in fact, it lost me, my actual interest. I think he raised some good points, I think, throughout the book. I like things like his titles, discussing purpose, which is really, really important to me, and the masculine and feminine energy. The differences between both men and women, I thought was very interesting, in how we think and how our drives point towards our purpose or love. As a reader, as a creative, I like the synopsis or the breakdown at the beginning of each part of the chapter, as well as the titles, obviously, as I've just mentioned. The captions gave you an idea of what to expect, obviously, within the following pages. Summarizing, all in all, as I mentioned before, I gave the book a 3 out of 5. I've read lesser books as to the information relayed, but with the stories attached to the knowledge, I was there with the right at each line. An example of that obviously would be the Celestine Prophecy. Well, it's not an example, because actually that's a great book. The Celestine Prophecy, which isn't a lesser book, for me had me throughout my read. I was always very eager to get to the next page, or very eager to get to the next chapter with what was in store within the unraveling of the book. But why it's so great to me, well, I mean, that's why obviously the book was so great to me. With where my expectations were prior, I thought the book would have given, sorry, let me actually read what I wrote correctly. With where my expectations were, I thought I would have given it more in relation to also the rating. I don't know why, but I expected a little more from the book. Of course, there was a lot I related to and a lot I questioned as a result of the book, as with purpose and sexual control. But as we discussed either on or off air, the book, well, as we discussed obviously on or off air, the book is an international seller. But my introduction to the book was from the hip hop community, which took to it very well, as to how good the book is. And it might be far-fetched, but it might be because some of our traumas and some of our issues. I heard something recently as to when we get, I heard something very recently as to when we get, I heard something very recently as to when we get the So when the black community get money, we don't pass it down to the next generation. We pass it up first, because passing it. So apologies, I forget how I've written this. Anyway, we don't.
No, we got that. We got that.
No, yeah. So we don't pass it down the next generation. We pass it up. We pass it up first before passing it down. Looking after our parents, etc. Which is also displayed to me as a which is also displayed to me as a minority, why some of us can't or don't follow our purpose. Sorry, I think I've explained obviously why it resonated obviously to our community, because a lot of us, not a lot of us, maybe some of us in our community don't have the purpose that we would like, because we're so distracted with other things that we've got going on, looking after our parents, etc., etc., etc. That's perhaps a conversation. Well, I said that's a conversation for another day. But as I said, it's an international bestseller, and so it would have related to other ethnic groups or other groups in general. Again, in my summary, the book was informative, but I would have liked more from the author, truth be told. But in obviously in my thoughts, I tried to figure out whether it was just myself, and I know obviously we've had conversations personally as to our differing views and so on and so forth. So I went on to Amazon to actually check up a few book reviews, and truth be told, I have actually brought out a few negative ones, which is not necessarily doesn't tell the whole picture and the whole story. But I thought I'd at least say that to give you an idea. And I thought there was a lot of the views were quite polarizing, as in one or the other. So as I said before, so I brought the negative ones to the table. And those were like a waste of time. I felt I was scammed. Honestly, I felt I was listening to something from the 90s, from a sexual guru. All right. What else? A recipe for codependency, which I can see and understand that.
I know there was a woman that left that review.
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, so I can go on forever in regards to some of the reviews I got. I don't necessarily want to read them all because I'll be reading them for days. Utter nonsense. Anyway, that is my book review.
Any positive reviews that you saw?
I did, and I'll be honest. My book review is quite skewed because of my view on the book. I wasn't really feeding the book. I wasn't really feeding the book, but I did believe in the very beginning of the book, I don't want to say he nailed his colors to the mast, but I mean, I think he started the book very well. I just felt as the book developed, I just didn't really enjoy it, or I didn't think. I felt strongly as to his views and his opinions as to what he was stating in regards to masculinity or even femininity.
I think from my point of view, P, there's two things on what you've said. The first thing is, I think with this book, because at the moment you're not in a long-term relationship and you're not living with a partner, and I think part of the reason why he managed to, I wouldn't say swing me around, but definitely I'm not just one side, as in like, whoa, like that language, fuck all the rest of the book and the message you're trying to perceive. That language is out of here. It wasn't like that, because some of the things he mentioned, I've seen, been in it or seen it, and I'm like, what? Like, you hit the nail on the head. So I have to give you kudos on that. And the other thing, you're right, you're spot on, because I think I said in my book review, he opened it up, the first, like, I don't know how many pages. When you opened up the book, you're like, okay, this is going to be an interesting read, yeah? And then there's a segment where he really goes to town on like the language, and it's hard to detract from that. It's hard to see past that. It's very difficult. But then he brings it back around. I can't remember what episode of the season it is, where I think we even said, right, these last 2, 3, 4 chapters, he's been praising the women, like praising them. Like we even said that. So I think like, it's almost like there's a segment in the book that if you're not careful, you'll just get, you'll remember, like you get hooked and be like, that language, I can't see past it. You're reading, but you're remembering that language. That's what I would say on what you said, bro.
I want to ask you, Mace, to go back to your review and that saying about the language. What is it about the language that triggers you? Because when I've read it, I understand exactly what he means. He means, like, when you say the feminine, he's not necessarily talking about a woman. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's talking about the feminine essence. So,
okay,
if you're a man and you're feminine, he's referring to you. You're the feminine part of it. Like if you're in a gay relationship and you've got feminine and you've got the masculine, whether you're a man, woman, 2 men or 2 women, you're gonna have that's why he talks about polarity. You're gonna have to have one. You can't have 2. You can't have 2 masculine energies in a relationship. It's never gonna work. So even if you're in a gay relationship, you're gonna have a masculine, you're gonna have a feminine. So when he's referring to the feminine, he's not necessarily saying the woman. The feminine essence is X, Y, Z, or the feminine essence will do this, the feminine essence will do that. So this is my point, like what's actually triggering you with the language?
Right, there's 2 things there. So the first thing is, I probably should have done a bit more research on Deida before we read the book, because obviously throughout us going through the book and beforehand, you've made it clear of kind of where he's at in terms of spirituality. And I hadn't done my due diligence on him. But the second thing is, I think then the fact that like you've seen it from one angle in terms of the feminine essence, and I know he talks about, because he talks about even in the bedroom, sorry, not even the bedroom, he talks about in the relationship that about traits, and your woman can have the masculine traits. I know that, but then throughout the other parts of the book, it helped me being like a reader that just kind of reads the words and sometimes doesn't delve that deep to say that, like refer to it as the feminist rather than I'm seeing the feminine, the masculine. I'm seeing when she does this, she will do this. Like in my review, I quoted verbatim where he says something along the lines of she will antagonize you or something like that. So when I'm seeing the feminine and I'm seeing she, I'm putting them all as one package. That's what I'm referring to.
Sorry, just very quickly, I think there's nothing anyone has said that is wrong in regards to any of our reviews. I do think you say some really interesting things, French, in reference to his perspectives or the way he's telling the story. I totally actually understand that. I think maybe for me, I find it very difficult to look past. Maybe I find it difficult to look past that or to look at it from that perspective. And like just touching on 1 or 2 things Mason said, anyway, touching on 1 or 2 things, I think we mentioned the 18-year-old thing as to him dropping his babysitter off. There's 1 or 2 other things obviously in the book, but in reference to that or things very, very similar to that, I think that's actually part of some of our problems in that I don't think us as men actually have good sexual control. I know he's kind of preaching some of that, but some of the language I think he uses almost encourages that behavior, I would say. I mean,
this is my point though. This is what I was saying in the book review, because you need to have a certain understanding of what he's saying, because he's not saying, like, he's not encouraging you to be looking at 18-year-olds and being like, that's good food or nothing.
Not the 18-year-olds, but I mean, I know what you talk.
And this is my point when I said in this Western society, this is how we think. We make everything sexualized. So we look at an 18-year-old girl and think, well, if I'm with her, there's some sexual thoughts running by and I need to act on them. Where he's saying it's like, okay, accept that there's a sexual energy that she may omit. But that doesn't mean, as you just referred to, is you need to have, as a man, have control over your own lustfulness. Like if you can't control that, that's your problem. That's not really her problem. But what he's saying is accepting and being aware that yes, there's a younger girl. As men, we're generally attracted to a younger female, but that doesn't mean we have to and need to act on it. Just acknowledgement of the energy is all you need to do. It's like, okay, cool. I know she's a young girl, she's pretty, blah, 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 whatever it may be, but I'm not interested in her, but I can appreciate the energy that she's giving off. Do you know what I mean? You see when to put it another way, see when like a woman comes in and she may be dressed in a certain way, but she's just got an energy about her that you can't help but look at her. It doesn't mean that she wants you to come and run her down and ask for a number and that. It's just that she's omitting an energy, a certain energy. The same way the man then walk into a certain room, you just know this person's got a certain energy about them, whether it's he's a boss or whatever it may be. Just someone steps in the room, you just know this person's here. They just omit their energy. It's not that they're trying to do it to encourage you to look at them or talk to them or have thoughts about them. It's just their personal energy. Like if you walk into the room and you're happy for the sake of being happy, that's on you. If someone else looks at you and thinks, fuck, man, I don't want to see this dude looking happy. That's your problem. That's your own issue. But it's having that control to be like, I'm not gonna dampen that person's energy because I may not be happy, but they're clearly happy. So it's the same with you when you put it to a younger person, a younger female. They've got a certain energy that they're gonna omit, but it's for you to control your lustfulness, and that's the point that he's trying to make. That's what I've read anyway. That obviously we've all got our own perspectives.
Yeah, like, I mean, I know you're finishing. Well, I believe you're finishing. No. So like, I find it very difficult to disagree with anything you said, because I understand the perspective you're coming from as to the way he's written.
Yeah.
Kind of like in parts of my review, I think what I'm essentially saying is I don't agree with his writing style, and I feel he could have said those things, or he could have wrote narratives, or he could have built narratives around some of the things he said, which would have made it a much better read, and I would have digested it. Yeah, I would have digested it a lot better. Which is why I kind of compared it to, let's say, the Celestine Prophecy. And so I wrote my review a good couple of weeks ago, so which is probably the reason why I kind of stumbled over one or two things that I was saying. But with the Celestine Prophecy, I'm not going to say one message is better than the other. It the messages in this book are a lot stronger. But the way the Celestine Prophecy was written is like, in order to find out more, I had to read. It was like a story. I had to read it. I was fully involved in the book. Whereas I felt this dude was, I don't say this dude, but I felt with some of the stuff that was said in this book was almost, it was, I always forget the type of statements or questions they are. It's either like a yes or no, you know what I mean? And I just, and I don't want to say there was friction, but I didn't really warm to it, you know what I mean? So after the initial stages of the book as to purpose and things like that, which, as you know, these are things I'm quite strong on, time, or a lot of those things. After that, when he started talking about, there were other things he spoke about. I know the book is essentially about not just sexual energy, but spirituality and stuff like that. But there were parts within that middle part which I didn't really take to, and it made it very difficult for me to actually finish the book, because now I was on the back foot as to where's this going, because he said a few things which are quite, they don't really sit well with me with I don't want to say my ethos, but I think you understand I think what I'm saying, or I hope you understand what I'm saying. It didn't really sit well with me, so it was very difficult for me to move on, or to ignore what he said, because I think he was saying, like, I mean, as you said, not accept, but acknowledge the sexual energy. And then there was maybe, I think the chapter after, it was essentially, he said something very similar, but maybe with a bit more maybe aggression as to, like, almost accepting that strong sexual energy as to, wanting a woman, etc., etc. But again, obviously, as to my point, I think that's actually our problem nowadays in this society, or in our society, and that I feel if we really look back in hindsight as to some of our, I'm gonna say discretions. I think we all have some in some way, shape, or form as to maybe how we've treated a woman in the past, or etc., etc., or maybe how we've seen things transpire. We would kind of question and say, I wish I'd done that better, or I wish I spoke to this girl better, or blah blah blah, so on and so forth. And I'm unsure. I kind of feel it kind of gave, license is the wrong word, but it gave excuse for some of those thoughts and those feelings and the way some of the things actually transpired, like once upon a time.
Yeah, no, I feel what you're saying. So obviously, as May said from the start, we've got different opinions, which is good. I mean, it leads for good discussion. So I definitely hear what you're saying and perspective you're coming from. I know you was going to jump in there, Mace.
No, I think you summed up what I was trying to say previously, the writing style. So like what you said, P, about the writing style is spot on in that, like with me, sometimes reading between the lines ain't my best aspect. And if certain times he's using she or women and then the feminine, if there is a difference there, it would help me to, what I mean? Like, it would help me if it's clear that there is a difference, because he uses she, women, and then also the feminine and masculine at various interchangeable at various times in the book. I put them all into one, if that makes sense. The feminine is the woman, is she, all one. So that's the way I've done it. Even like on the front where he says spiritual guide to master the challenges of women. I mean, work and sexual desire. It's just put them all as one. But if it's a case whereby when sometimes he's referring to the feminine, it's about having that feminine kind of aura or trait. It might not be a feminine. That's fair enough. So that, I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, as I said, I've done a little bit more due diligence to him and realized that's kind of where he's coming from. Maybe I would have taken that into account. But yeah, I mean, there's messages there. That's what I'm saying. I'm not castrating the book at all, because as I said, there's some messages in there. And because I've been through some of the scenarios, I can take things from the book, which is why I would not just shut up in a closet and say, if someone come around to my flat and said, oh, which one of these should I recommend? That one wouldn't be hidden around the back saying, no, you don't take that. It wouldn't be like that. But it would come with the fine print. You know what I mean? This is like some of the language in there. You know what I mean? I'm just letting you know.
Like, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, we can probably talk about this for days, but we'll continue talking. Like, I feel like it's not right sometimes to isolate things from the book, but I feel if you were to isolate things from the book and then pass it to, let's say, a woman, all right, because feminine energy doesn't necessarily have to be, I mean, directed as to a woman, but anyway, we're men, so let's talk about women. So if I was to pass it to a woman, and they were to read it, I'm unsure they would be fully accepting of maybe some of the things that were actually said in the book. But I feel with the start he made in the book, I think it was very, very compelling, and it made people very open and very receptive to maybe some of the other things that were said in the book. I think also what is very, very interesting is that he has obviously another book in relation to, I think, the feminine energy and the reverse as to the mask of masculinity. Anyway, the reverse as to the book. I'm speaking from a more feminine standpoint. So I totally understood that, or I respect that, or that. Oh, sorry, that would be very interesting to read or to understand.
It's subjective, people, because I mean, you posted that clip where the woman's telling, I don't know, boyfriend or friend, she's saying, yo, go get this. This is what I've been trying to say, and it's all in this book. And she was delighted with it. She was like, it's all in there. This is what I want, or women want. Like, I don't know if she generalized as women or said what she wanted, but it come from her, and she was happy with what was in there. So she obviously, parts that I took offense to, she didn't see that, you know what I mean? Or she didn't take offense to that. She saw past that. So it is subjective, because maybe there might be, well, we know because we've seen one that really rated it, was recommended to a guy. Like, they were on a FaceTime call and she's recommended to a guy to say, you should take this book in, essentially.
Yeah, so I mean, all her points. I mean, her points. I actually, I mean, that's what I find really interesting, because French has a different view to myself and yourself, or we probably all have different opinions. But I actually respect French's opinion. I actually understand exactly what he's talking about. And likewise, when she was speaking with him, although I had different opinions as to my standpoint in the book, I could not ignore what she said. I understood what she was talking about.
I mean, from a female's perspective, you'll be surprised how much they actually like this book. Going back to something you said earlier, P, about the whole hip hop community and its relevance in it. I'm not too sure if you're aware or not, but it was Nipsey Hussle's late wife,
Lauren London.
Yeah, she recommended it to him. He was telling him to read it because it was a book, and she could understand. And again, it depends on what kind of woman it is. If the woman can understand, like, and not to say that women don't have a purpose, like, let's not confuse that. But in terms of a man, and it goes back to one of the questions that was posed during the season in regards to choosing your purpose or the most fulfilling relationship. In regards to that, men most likely 9 times out of 10 are going to want to fulfill their purpose. And I haven't done a survey, so don't quote me on that. But I'm just saying, in general, as a general painting the brush statement, men would more likely go and choose their purpose. And as a woman, their position, I'm not going to say is to support it, but a woman that you want would want to support your purpose. So that's how the whole basis of the book came around in terms of the hip hop community. That's what I'm aware of anyway. So in regards to actual women liking the book, she's not the only one, and I believe there's a few other like well-known people that are advocates for this book. And yeah, I don't think it's a sexist book, because as I mentioned, he explains the language of why he's saying what he's saying. It's because if he was to say he, she, her, him in every part of the book, it could be probably twice the size of what it is, just to explain certain sentiments and things like that. So that, I think he clears it up quite well, but I understand where you're both coming from as well. If you're not fully aware of that perspective, then it could quite easily be read as not discriminatory, like not being discriminative, but very he, she, us, them. Like, but as I said before, I mentioned it a couple of times. I didn't read it as that, but I fully understand why you would have that perspective as well. But yeah, again, just to wrap it up on the book review. Personally, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I'm not giving it a 5 out of 5 because I still think there's gaps in it. There's things that I don't totally agree with it. Not to say that I want an author to write something that I agree with wholeheartedly, but for it to get a 5 out of 5, there's still other aspects that may not be included or I felt was, I guess, deep dived into enough. But overall, I definitely recommend it. I would recommend it to females and males, feminine and masculine. And as I said before, it's something I would revert back to here and there to, I guess, yeah, as a reference book. Yeah, I'll definitely go back and read over it again, certain aspects of it anyway.
All right. Anyone got anything else to say on the book or anyone's reviews?
No, I think a lot of stuff, I mean, that I'm thinking about, I mean, I don't know, as French was talking, I was looking to my ceiling as to 1 or 2 things that I was going to say, and I thought, actually, these are things that I've said already, and maybe these are things that I have real strong gripes about. I mean, because I think throughout the course of reading this book and obviously, between the start of this book and obviously now doing a review, there's a number of things that I've actually thought about. Not necessarily that I've done that as mad, but I've began thinking about my energy or or the way I the way we as a society kind of treat. Funny, it's actually quite poignant in that today's International Women's Day. But like the way we kind of treat women, or the way we've treated women in the past, or some of the things we've seen that was deemed acceptable in the past. And I just look at it and I think to myself, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really sit well with me. Obviously, and these are things that are now not necessarily coming to light, but we're now as a society beginning to have these conversations, obviously maybe a little bit more as to things that are wrong, that were right or acceptable, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And again, obviously, he speaks to some of the things that I said in the book. Like the book was written in 97, I think it was, or maybe a little bit 90 or 97. And it made me think, actually, maybe at the time in which he wrote it, not the language, but in fact, no, maybe the language too, but some of the things the way he wrote the book was in a time period that was cool, or a time period that was okay to maybe say some of those things. Not to say to have, anyway, I probably can go around in circles as to some of my thoughts. But yeah, it was more, anyway, yeah. Let me just conclude there because I'll go on. So I'm still kind of like trying to assess it myself. Based on what French has said. Yeah, based on what French has said anyway.
Cool. Do you wanna round up anything there, Mace?
Nah, I think P's rounded up nicely. And as I said, I think we've got 3 contrasting opinions, essentially.
Which is good. Good though,
yeah, 3 contrasting. So it just goes to show, man, it's subjective, it's from your perspective, and you know, it just goes to show how you take on board the information in the book. So yeah, man, it's good. It's like, I think it's a book that's like to divide opinion, and I think P's highlighted with some of the reviews he's read, but maybe not the most creative of wording they've used, like it's trash. Like we haven't read a bit more than that, but
no, I'll be honest, there was more. Yeah. But I mean, I just didn't want to get into reading reviews.
No, that's fine, but it just goes to show there's a divide across the board. We've seen a video with a woman loving it. French has mentioned the hip hop community have promoted it big time, where there's well-known public figures such as Lauren London who promoted it to Nipsey, rest in peace. So there's definitely a divide there, and it's a talking point. But obviously, there must be something to take out of that book. The fact that, you know, it's gone around the world. There's first couple of pages of the book, I think there's people with certain PhDs and all this, women and men who are like, you know, how has he managed How does he know this information? All that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, as I said, I wouldn't not recommend it. I wouldn't not recommend it. So there we go.
Do you know what? Like, see, I don't want to go on. There's a part of me that wants to just let it go, let it go, and end the season. But like harping back to that 18-year-old thing, all right. And again, no, and again, it's all a choice of words, all right.
Yeah,
So I understand obviously what you said, friend. So I'm not necessarily digging them out. But what it's made me do, and like maybe I'm just kind of maybe I'm gravitated toward this type of content because obviously I send these things in the group and stuff like that. And sometimes, not even sometimes, yeah, let's say sometimes because I'm not listening to it all the time. But I've heard women say, and rightly so, like, what's wrong with you? That like, so okay, just say I'm 35. I'm 35, and as he pointed out in the book, he was dropping off his babysitter who's 18. All right, but we do know that there are people, all right, who are a little bit older who see younger women. Examples of this actually are, I think someone was referring to Leonardo DiCaprio and one or two other individuals recently as to seeing younger women. And what these women have said is, yo, what is wrong with you that you need to go look for younger women? As to what is it about that younger feminine energy that you're seeking? Are you sure there's nothing wrong with you as to why you're doing that? And obviously, as men, we look at it different. We probably do look at it differently. I don't want to. Yeah, we probably do look at it differently, or I believe we look at it differently. But I cannot sit and pretend that these women are not right.
Hold on, but when the shoe's on the other foot, though, when the older woman seeks a younger man, then what?
That's a good question, French. It's a good question, French.
Women can talk, or they can talk what they want and say, oh well, why is that older man looking for a younger woman? The same way you want a young boy to give it to you proper because their energy is on 1,000 because their engine box is you know what I mean? It's young, it's vitality and all that good stuff. So when the shoe's on the other foot, it's easy for someone to say that.
Correct. I don't have too much to say in counter. Well, I'm not countering, but I mean, I think you raise a very good point there. But what I would say is that I think it's probably more common for a man to do. I'm struggling to come up with the words because I just find it difficult to say. I think it's more common. Sorry?
I get what you're saying, but considering it's now Women's Day, International Women's Day, right? And it could be the day that more women are, I guess, advocating for things to be more like it is for men, right?
Correct.
So in that same light, they're more likely to start going for younger men, and it should be deemed okay, right?
I'm gonna say yes, but I think what I'm referring to is anyway. Go on, yes, go on.
So if it's all equal on both sides, what is the actual problem then? And I'm not even before. I just want to clear it up. I'm not advocating that as 35, 36-year-old.
Oh, none of us are.
Go for 18-year-old girls. No, it's not even that kind of party. But I'm just saying, if that's your thing as an individual, that's your thing. But going back to the same point, the original point about the whole babysitter, he's not advocating for men to be like moving to an 18-year-old. He's more just saying, acknowledging that there is a sexual attraction, but you don't move on it. You don't talk to her in a certain way. You just know, okay, she's, as I keep on reiterating, she's got a sexual essence, she's omitting it, you can be aware of it, but you're not going to take it any further than just acknowledging it and dropping her off and keep it pushing.
That we can go back and forth for a while. This is going to be the last I think I'm going to say. All right, I have a discrepancy with, I think, definitely the way he said. I mean, he's not new to this. He's wrote several books, so I have a problem.
He did it purposefully, you know how some people are trolls.
Yes, I understand.
No, people are trolls. They just do stuff because they know they're getting a reaction. He knows as an author, he's written it in like even says it at the back. He's a provocative author, so he's going to say certain things, knowing it's going to strike a chord in some people in society. He's going to get their back up. But it's, as May said, sometimes as a reader, you don't want to always have to read between the lines. You just want to be able to just read it and know what's being said. But in this case, he's not giving you that I guess that sensibility. Do you know what I mean? He's like, all right, cool. He wants to fuck with the reader. That's the impression I get, because, as I said, if you read through it, and as May's quite pointedly pointed out, is in the last several chapters, he kind of turns the tide around in how he's talking about the feminine essence, which, from Mace's point of view, helped kind of bring back his perspective on the book. Now, you wouldn't get to that point if you read a certain portion of the book and was like, nah, I've had enough, I can't take it. You're not really going to appreciate the full 360 viewpoint of his perspective.
Yeah, I felt like
We can keep going back and back.
I have something else to say, but I don't want to do that, because I think we can go back and forth for another 10-15 minutes.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's. Well, I mean, we've all said whether we'd recommend it, given our 5 scores. Just want to say a big shout out to all the women across the world for Women International Day. Salute yourselves, give yourselves a high five, and all of that. But we are doing the way of the superior man, so all the man them. Don't know. Nail up. Yeah, that's a wrap. If anything, if you don't want to say anything else.
Yeah, just usual, really. Fully booked. The People Them podcast, the book club with a twist. Full_E_booked on the Instagram, and then we're on the Twitter, the Facebook, Spotify, and SoundCloud, and YouTube are the 3 main places you're gonna catch the visuals and the audio. So keep it locked, man.